Hello everyone, JRDeal96 here with a brand new video, and as you can tell by the title, it's another storytime video. Now the last storytime video we did was back in November, where I talked about my experience at the big event convention that I went to that same month, where I met Paul Heyman, MJF, Simon Miller, and Thunder Rosa. And as you can tell by the title, it's another experience I had at the big event convention back in March. I feel like it's now a tradition at this point where I talk about my experience at the big event convention, since this is the third experience that I've done so far. So anyways, let's talk about my experience at the recent big event convention that they had. Now, preparing for this convention, I immediately bought my ticket the second they went on sale, maybe like a few weeks after the last event that they had. I knew I was going to the next one because I have a lot of fun at these conventions. So in preparing, I was wondering, okay, depends on who will be at this convention. Don't go too crazy, even though in the end I technically did. So the people that they announced for this convention was pretty cool. So they first announced Bret the Hitman Hart was going to be at this convention. And I was like, wow, that's a big name to have, for sure. The best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. So I was like, alright, I'll keep an eye on him. But then, around Christmas time, they announced a big one. AJ Lee. So I was like, I am definitely going to meet her. I had to meet AJ Lee just to complete the fact that I have already met CM Punk, so I wanted to at least meet AJ Lee as well, because I was also a fan of her work even before she was married to CM Punk. So it was pretty awesome when they announced her for this convention. So other people they announced was Rob Van Dam, Jim Ross, Indi Hartwell, Shaul Guerrero, the daughter of the late Eddie Guerrero, Mercedes Moné, Eric Bischoff, Zilla Fatu, Tugboat, Vampiro, Matt Riddle, Caitlyn, Titus O'Neil, and Darren Young, a boxer named Riddick Bowe. Ric Flair was there once again, and many, many more. Here's who I ended up getting. I ended up getting a pro photo op and an autograph from AJ Lee, a combo with Bret Hart, a combo with RVD, a combo with Jim Ross, a combo with Indi Hartwell, a combo with Shaul Guerrero, a combo from Brooke Adams, aka Miss Tessmacher from TNA, and then a combo for this female wrestler named Sofia Sivan. That's 8 people I ended up meeting this convention. There were 3 other people that were announced for this convention but ended up canceling. First one was Lola Vice. She was announced for the convention in the very beginning, and it was about a week before the convention before they announced that she canceled. So in the end, they replaced her with Eva Marie, and I think also Sonya Deville ended up being there as well with Mandy Rose. Julia Hart, who ended up canceling pretty early because Tony Khan decided I needed you for a random collision no one's gonna watch. And then Allie Katch. And here's the thing about Allie Katch. Allie Katch back in January at a GCW event ended up breaking her leg. So when she broke her leg, I was like, well, I guess she ain't going to this convention now, because you would expect them to cancel it right away. No, they waited until near the beginning of March, 2 months after she broke her leg. I guess for a while she was dead set to go to this convention, but in the end she ended up canceling due to other things. Mostly try to recover from a broken leg. So hopefully she'll be at the next one. So now let's officially talk about my experience at the convention. I ended up getting at the venue around 8:45 in the morning, and it was a pretty cloudy, drizzly day. So in the end, it wasn't really a nice day outside. So I ended up once again getting the Fast Pass, and I didn't get into the venue until around 9:40. So here was what the venue looked like once again. Pretty simple and pretty similar to how it looked the last 2 times. The first thing I did was immediately go to AJ Lee's booth, because I knew that the pro photo op for AJ Lee was around 10:30. She was the very first pro photo op session they had for the pro photo ops. She was the first person of the day, and she only had 1 session. She didn't have multiple sessions like Paul Heyman did. So I was like, alright, let me just get the pro photo op done, and then I'll try to focus on the other people that I'm going to meet as well. So I ended up mingling with some of the people in line while waiting for the pro photo op for AJ Lee. And one of those people I was mingling with was someone I recognized from Twitter. This girl who goes by the name Pandemonium on social media, who's friends with also Marissa and Cadaver, Rhea Ripley fans. She was also this cosplayer at Fanatics Fest, cosplaying as Rhea Ripley. Here's a funny story. She showed me her lock screen, which is her photo op with Rhea Ripley at Fanatics Fest, where she's being lifted by Rhea. And there was this moment where I'm like, wait a minute. I recognize you. So I just found that pretty funny, that little interaction we had. And I mingled with her for a little bit until finally the pro photo op started for AJ Lee. So the first people to go in were the VIPs, which is fair. And I think I was the very first person in the regular line once again. Just like I was for Paul Heyman's, I was the very first person for AJ Lee's line for the general admission. So when I walked into the booth for AJ just looked at my t-shirt, which is the one I'm wearing right now, which is this Larry the Dog shirt. And she goes, "What is this shirt?" And I'm like thinking to myself, wait, has Punk told her? Because I'm thinking maybe Punk would have told her by now. And I told her this was an official WWE shirt they had for Larry, and she started dying of laughter. I guess she's never seen this shirt before. So here's our photo together. And surprisingly, she is way shorter than I thought. I sent that photo to my mom and she goes, "She's so tiny," even though she's like an inch shorter than my mom. You kind of see me kind of like hunched down a little bit because of the fact of how short she is. So that was the very first thing I ended up doing. I hugged her and I said, "I'll see you later," because I had the autograph to still do. And she's like, "Okay." And honestly, when I look back at that day, I should have just immediately jumped online to AJ Lee's autograph line just to get her done. So then after that, I don't have to worry about waiting in line for so long. But that's not what I ended up doing. Like a dumbass. I didn't do her autograph until the very end. We'll be back with AJ Lee later. But while we're at it, let me talk about my experiences with the other people I met that day. So the second person I ended up meeting that day was Brooke Adams, aka Miss Tessmacher, aka Brooke Tessmacher, aka Brooke. She had a lot of AKAs in TNA, mostly because of the fact that the Miss Tessmacher name is from Superman. She was Lex Luthor's assistant in the first 2 Superman movies with Christopher Reeve, which is probably where they got the name from. Yeah, they changed her name a bunch of times. But I also know she was part of Extreme Expose with Kelly and Layla in ECW, so I'm familiar with her and stuff. So here's the weird thing about it. At her table, she had no wrestling photos to sign. All she had was very sexy photo shoots she did. I'm like, where are the wrestling photos? Because I don't want to get weird looks from my parents like, why'd you get that photo? So this was the tamest photo I ended up getting from her. I even said to her, like, you got no wrestling photos? Like, I kind of found that odd. And she's like, I didn't even notice that. So that was kind of funny, our interaction together, because of the fact that she didn't have any wrestling photos to sign. But in the end, this was the photo I ended up getting. You could see her, of course. She has to wear something very revealing here to James Brooke. Right there. Yeah, she was one of my favorites alongside Velvet Sky. So when it came time to take the photo with her, one of the people in charge had this giant light attachment. And she like attached my phone on this little rig that had the light above it. So I guess she wanted to look good in the photos, which I get. But here's the other thing that I'm very particular with when it comes to taking photos, especially with women. I don't want to put my hands on them out of respect because I don't want to weird them out or creep them out in any way. At one point, she even said, like, put your arm around me. Because again, I was trying to be very respectful. That's just my approach to things in life. I just wanted to be respectful and stuff. And she was like, oh, that's so sweet of you. And I go, yeah, I know. So here is our photo together. Yeah, she had a pretty interesting outfit, let's just say. So yeah, in the end, I was being very respectful. In the end, I ended up hugging her and afterwards and thanking her and stuff, and that was it for her. She is a really nice person, very down to earth, and such a sweetheart. Miss Tessmacher is another sweetheart for sure. So the next person I ended up doing was Shaul Guerrero, one of the daughters of the late Eddie Guerrero. This was a little bittersweet to me because of the fact that this was one of Eddie's daughters, and knowing how much I am a fan of Eddie's work, this felt very bittersweet to me because of it. This kind of reminded me of when I met JoJo, Bray Wyatt's widow, last year. But Shaw is a very, very sweet person. She complimented my tattoos, like the Rose Skull tattoo and the This Too Shall Pass one, alongside the Rey Mysterio one. I even told her when I started watching, and I started watching the week after Eddie Guerrero died, and I wish I watched sooner because of how amazing Eddie Guerrero was. She was very appreciative of the fact that I was a fan of Eddie Guerrero. And I even told her my experience I had at Fanatics Fest, where I came out to Eddie Guerrero's music at Fanatics Fest at the WWE entrance thing. And I told her the story of when I went to the booth to check if they had Eddie's music. They said yes. So then I jump online. So then when it's my turn, I ask for Eddie. They initially go no. And I said, I just asked somebody earlier if they had Eddie's music, and they said yes. And then they asked again, and initially gave me no again, but then immediately went yes, go, go, go. And that's when I ended up doing it. And she even said, like, did you do the shimmy well? And I showed her, and she's like, oh, look at you. I pretty much learned how to shimmy from Eddie Guerrero. So here is the autograph. It's her with pictures of Eddie Guerrero. Pretty cool picture. And here is our photo together. She's a very, very sweet person. So that was a really fun experience, and it was kind of bittersweet because of the fact that it was Eddie Guerrero's daughter. But what made it better was me telling the story of my experience at Fanatics Fest doing Eddie Guerrero's entrance. So the next person I ended up doing was Indi Hartwell. I was a fan of her work in WWE, and especially her stuff she did in NXT with Dexter Lumis and that wedding angle, and then that group that she was in with Candice LeRae and Johnny Gargano and Austin Theory, The Way. I was a fan of her work in WWE and NXT, so I was kind of bummed when she got released. And what surprised me the most about Indi is how tall she is. She might have been wearing boots that might have elevated her off the ground a little bit, but she is pretty tall. She's only 5'9", but it felt like she was almost the same height as me. Maybe it was the boots she was wearing. So yeah, I was a fan of her work in WWE. Not only that, but I've been following her before that. I first discovered her when she was in Riot City Wrestling. You know, the same promotion that Rhea Ripley started her career. So that's what I ended up telling her. Like, I told her how I've been following her career pretty much since Riot City Wrestling, and I've been a fan of her work in WWE and NXT. When I told her that, she asked me what other female wrestlers that I follow from Riot City Wrestling. The people I told Indi was Rhea Ripley and Blair Alexis. But I should have also mentioned Savannah Summers, Izzy Shaw, and Harley Wonderland. But I'd only mentioned Rhea Ripley and Blair Alexis because my mind kind of blanked out for a bit. So she was like, oh, cool. So here's the photo I ended up getting signed by her. One of the photos she took in NXT/WWE. To me, of course, because I don't have any plans to sell any of these. So here is the photo I took with her, and she had her thumbs up. So I was like, I might as well just go along with her and just do it as well. That was that one, and I hugged her and thanked her, and that was it. So the next person I ended up doing was Jim Ross. This was probably the quickest interaction I had the entire convention. Thing was, I didn't talk to him much until after the photo we took together. That was it. So here's the photo that I ended up getting signed from JR. Good old JR. Good God Almighty, it's gonna be a slobber knocker. One of my all-time favorite announcers, commentators from wrestling. So here's the photo I took with him. Pretty simple. And that's when he said thank you, and then I said one of the greatest announcers of all time, and he's like, thank you, I appreciate that. And that was it. It was a pretty short interaction. Like, I didn't want to take too much time with JR, especially with his age at this point. So I was heading back to get more protective sleeves for my signed photos, and as I walked by Danhausen, who was walking somewhere. And he noticed my t-shirt and he goes, oh, they shipped those out already? And I'm like, yeah, I got mine a couple of weeks ago. And he was like, oh, I gotta get mine at some point. So pretty much I had a little funny interaction with Danhausen, which was cool. So then the next person on my list was Rob Van Dam. This interaction we had together was pretty awesome because I told him the story of when I went to the Nassau Coliseum for ECW/SmackDown in November 2006. I remember Rob Van Dam had an Extreme Rules match against Hardcore Holly, and when RVD came out, I guess this was during commercial break, I did his RVD pose, and I swear he pointed directly at me. So I told him that, and he was like, oh, that's awesome. And then he asked me this weird question. So he asked me if I went to other conventions before, and I said yes. So the one I mentioned to him was New York Comic Con, where I met Joe Hendry and Jacksepticeye. And he asked me who Jacksepticeye was, and I told him he's a gamer/content creator. He also does comic books now. So here's the photo I ended up getting signed from him, and he pretty much did all four corners. To James, one of a kind, WWE Hall of Fame 2021, RVD 5 stars. Dave, after he signed that, he gave me this card, which is a card that is promoting this wrestling show that he was hosting alongside his wife. Katie Forbes called Only Wrestlers. When he handed me that card, I was like, oh yeah, that's right, you're doing that new promotion. The one that used to be called Ultimate Women of Wrestling. And I remember Katie Forbes, I think, was on a few of those shows that they had. I think they only had like 6 events total. And I think the last time they had an event was in February 2024. And after that, I got rebranded to Only Wrestlers. And he asked me, did you go to that event? I'm like, sadly, no, but I remember seeing it online. So then we took the photo and I had to do the pose. He literally said Rob Van Dam when we took the photo together, which was kind of funny. But that was a really cool interaction we had together. I shook his hand and thanked him, and that was it. So the next person I ended up meeting was an independent wrestler who has been wrestling now for over a year now. And her name is Sofia Sivan. She's an up-and-coming wrestler. The first time I came across Sofia was a match she had against Caitlin Marie, I think. I'm not sure. So Sofia's booth was literally right next to Mercedes' booth. And Mercedes' booth was essentially set up just like Paul Heyman's. So I've been following her career for a while. And the other thing about it was, she also is a cosplayer. She told me she started doing cosplay. And it wasn't until more recently she started wrestling. So this was the photo I ended up getting signed from her. Pretty cool. Her outfit kind of reminds me a little bit of Diva from Overwatch, especially the headpiece she has. So this was the photo we ended up taking together. And we had to get a photographer to help assist for the photo. She didn't have anybody with her. She was just by herself at the table, which I kind of felt bad for. This random photographer walked by and we asked her, hey, can you take our photo? And she gladly did. And this is the result. Pretty cool. So yeah, Sofia is a pretty nice person as well. And the other thing too was I wanted to make sure I was saying her name correctly. So the last thing I asked her was, how do you say your name? Sofia Sivan? And she goes, yes. I wanted to make sure I was not butchering her name when especially doing a video like this. I did the same thing with Shaul Guerrero as well. Like I wasn't sure if Shaw was the way to pronounce it, but she assured me, yes, that's how you pronounce her name. So that was it for Sofia. So now, here's the interesting part. I decided to finally jump onto AJ Lee's line. And at this point, AJ Lee's line was almost out the door. And there was some concern that she probably won't get to everybody. So I was like, you know what, I'll just jump onto AJ Lee's line. It took about close to an hour to finally get to AJ Lee. But while I was waiting for AJ Lee, I realized I'm going to have to try to get to Bret Hart's line as well while I'm at it. So I asked a few people to save my spot in line for me, which they gladly did. So I appreciate the guys who saved my spot in line. And one of those people who saved my spot in line was the guy who dresses up like The Rock. That guy. So I pretty much jumped onto Bret Hart's line. And at that point when I was waiting in line for Bret, AJ Lee's line started to move quick. So I was like, shit, I hope I don't end up in a situation where by the time I'm done with Bret, the people who are holding my spot in line are done. So I was hoping to get through Bret Hart pretty quickly before it was too late. So luckily enough, it was just in the nick of time. So this is the photo I ended up getting signed from the Hitman. He didn't sign it to me. It was a pretty quick interaction. It's him holding the Winged Eagle title, an iconic title belt. And I was told to sit next to him. And I told him that that title was one of my favorites. And he told me that that was his favorite championship design. And I told him my favorite title design was the Big Gold. But I'd also told him that the Winged Eagle was a very close second for me. Even though that wasn't my era of wrestling, that was one of my favorite championship designs. So here is the photo we took. And yeah, he is still the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. He was my mom's favorite. My mom loved him. So finally, after I was done with Bret, I immediately ran right back to AJ Lee's line, and luckily enough, I was just in time and I was able to get back in my spot in line. But there was another problem. They ran out of photos to get signed from AJ. So they asked someone to go to the back to go get more. So while the person was going to look for more, I was kind of like thinking, okay, if they don't have any more, my backup plan was, okay, I'll get my photo op with her signed instead. And as I was saying this, the security guard goes, don't worry about that because here comes the lady with more of those photos. So then I got my photo, so then I went up to get it signed. And she complimented my Larry shirt again. I even asked her, like, didn't Punk tell you about this? So what she told me was that I guess Punk sends her photos of prototypes, concept art of the t-shirt designs in question. And I guess she didn't see this exact one, but she kind of saw similar looking Larry the Dog shirts. So that's what she told me. So here is the photo in question I got signed from her. Her with the Divas Championship, that butterfly title. So then after that, I thanked her, and then she thanked me for coming to the convention to meet her and stuff, and I said, thank you for coming here. And that was all the people I met at the big event. So after all that, I went to the Tantalizing Tony booth, which was a cool booth that had like a camera that spun around you, and you could pose with title belts or pose by yourself, and you could choose what music to be played. So I went with CM Punk with the music, and I went with the current World Heavyweight Championship in WWE. So the guy did this introduction like as if he was introducing me as CM Punk. From Chicago, Illinois, weighing 218 pounds, CM Punk. And then the music started playing, and then I did the pose. So yeah, that was a really cool experience to do that. To pose with the world title and do all the CM Punk poses as well. So that was the Tantalizing Tony booth. But the booth to the right of it was a booth with a bunch of lucha masks. I was like, what masks should I get? So one of the masks I ended up getting was the CM Punk Straight Edge Society mask, the mask he wore after he had his head shaved bald. And I also got this Rey Mysterio mask, this red and black Rey Mysterio mask. It's made out of this weird silky material. It has 619 on the back, but a pretty cool mask overall. And my personal favorite was this one. This one is really cool. I like the material on this one. The material on this one looks pretty cool too. It's almost like Gucci, I guess, when you think about it. This looks very similar to the one he wore when he won the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania, but the color on the Eagles were a lot brighter compared to this. But overall, this was my favorite mask I ended up getting. And then finally I ended up getting this cool t-shirt right here with this cool little Rey Mysterio design right here. Pretty cool t-shirt right here. But overall, that was all the things I ended up getting at the convention. I got those 3 masks and that t-shirt. That was the only things I ended up buying at the convention. And overall, that's really my experience at the big event convention. So to quickly recap, I met AJ Lee, Bret the Hitman Hart, Jim Ross, Indi Hartwell, Shaul Guerrero, Brooke Adams, Rob Van Dam, and Sofia Sivan. So I ended up meeting 8 people at the big event convention. Obviously an experience I will never forget, for sure. Honestly, I cannot wait for the next one in November. But also I'm going to be going to Fanatics Fest as well, so that will be fun. So overall, that's really it on this story time video. Let me know what you thought in the comments down below. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe, share this video with your friends. Be sure to ring that bell to be part of the notification squad. Be sure to check out my Instagram because I make collabs with Markiplier, Jacksepticeye, even myself. I also do reenactments and cosplays on there, so go check it out. And be sure to check out my Tumblr and my Discord in the description as well. So until next time, JRDL96 signing out, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.